Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's show, the Beautifully Bruised and the CPS show. I am so glad that you have tuned in to join us today. I have a great show in store for you. We have a special guest that's going to be attending us on the show today that's going to bring some great information. I think that it's going to be very helpful and encouraging and inspiring. And actually, I'm just going to, I'm just get right to it. I think that it's a great way to help people know that you can overcome CPS. And sometimes I know that sounds so big and so far when you're dealing with CPS, right? It seems like something that you're never going to, when is it going to end? When is the light going to appear at the end of the tunnel? So I think it's very encouraging for you to just know that people do make it out. And again, I always start my show out giving thanks and credit to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, because that is who actually gave me the strength and the strength, the knowledge, the wisdom to help me overcome CPS as well, to be able to be sitting in front of you today, and to be able to bring guests on the show like our guest today, Mrs. Candace Odom, who has a great story that I think is really going to be encouraging for you, hopefully helpful for you. And I would even strongly recommend that with her being on the show today, if you know someone that may be going through CPS, or, if it's not you personally, or, a friend or a family member, if you could please like and share and subscribe to this channel. Attorney Vince has so many different ways to try to communicate to help. He is an attorney himself, obviously a trial attorney who knows how to fight CPS and get your children back home. And Grace, the producer, is someone that's on the show that produces these shows to help families like yourself, or if you know someone, to give them hope and ways to bring their children back home where they belong, which is from CPS. Okay. So again, without any further ado, I will not hesitate any longer. I want to go ahead and welcome Candace Odom to the show today.
Yes,
Candace,
thank you so much for having me.
absolutely, absolutely. When I heard your story, my God, it just touched my heart, and I just knew when we talked that I'm like, oh my God, she definitely needs to come on and speak to our listening audience to give them hope and encouragement, and just, what she went through and what she experienced. So without any further ado, Candace, I would love to just go right into it and ask you, how did take us from the beginning? How did CPS enter into your life, and what was that like?
Well, it began in June of 2020. A little back history, you know, leading up to the incident. The incident involved our oldest son. He was 18 months at the time. He's a happy and healthy 5-year old now. Um,
Praise God.
but he was 18 months old at the time when the incident happened. Months prior to that, my husband and I had noticed some disturbing behaviors. He would bang his head on various objects when he got frustrated, hard
Hmm.
and soft, from the couch, cabinets. The most disturbing, though, is when we decided to move him to his big boy room, from our bed,
Hmm.
because we were expecting baby number two, baby brother. So
Okay.
we thought this would be a perfect time to, get him in a big boy room, get him on his own. He did not adapt well to that setting at
Hmm.
all. He would stand
Hmm.
all night in his crib, scream, cry. We had a monitor, that we would monitor him on, and we would actually see him standing and falling asleep like on the railing, and then he'd pop his head back up and he
Hmm.
swinging it from side to side, and just
Hmm.
he would scream to the point of he would vomit. And
Wow.
no amount of me and my husband going in and trying to soothe him worked.
Wow.
And as concerned parents, we did what lots of parents would do. We reached out to our pediatrician at the time, and we were told not to be concerned, that he couldn't hurt himself, and that we just had to stick with the sleep training and that he would get it. So, against my better judgment, because my alarm bells as a mother were going off. And if I took anything at all from this experience, it's mothers, we know our children.
Yes, we do.
Yes, yes, doctors have, training and expertise, but
Right.
as a mother, when your gut is going off
Hmm.
and it's dismissed, seek help elsewhere.
That's
Um,
great advice, Candace. Yes, that's a great nugget.
and that's something that I've learned, not to be dismissed as a parent now.
Right.
Um, when I have concerns regarding either of my children now.
Right.
Um,
That's so good. Hmm.
but anyway, leading up to this incident, the night prior, he would have some occasional good nights like sprinkled in there, but it was very far in between.
Hmm.
The night before, we live in a 2-story house. My husband had taken him upstairs, to bathe him, get him ready for bed. I was unable to carry him up our stairs. I was 5 months pregnant at the time. Um,
Okay.
and I'm very petite. So just carrying a 18-month chunky toddler upstairs and trying to bathe and do bedtime, that just was difficult. So
That's a lot. Right.
my husband was very helpful, in that regard. Um and he went to sleep probably anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. I don't remember exactly how long my husband was up there.
Uh-huh.
Um but he came down. We went to bed. Everything was fine. Got up the next morning. My husband had been working at home due to COVID. Um,
Hmm.
I was getting ready for work. I was still expected to report into work as normal.
Hmm.
Um, and we just both were like, well, it's a little late. He's sleeping later than usual. Um,
Right.
so my husband went upstairs, and I remember I was just gathering my stuff together to go to work and just, like I ought normal. And I just heard, I've never heard my husband scream. Like I
Oh.
heard him scream. And he came running down, and all I saw was my baby, just his face covered in blood.
Oh, wow.
And so, we put him in my, husband's truck. I ride in the back seat with him, just hysterical. We're, just racing to our local ER. Um, and I just remember praying, the way he looked, I thought he was seriously injured, and that just, I was thinking horrible things.
Right. Of course.
In my
Wow.
mind, I was just praying for God not to take my baby.
Well, of course.
Um,
Right.
and we
I
get
can
to the
only imagine how
ER.
scary that could be. Hmm.
Yeah. And we get to the ER, and, my husband, gets and just sprints, to the front with him. I'm waddling as fast as I possibly can behind him.
Right.
Um, and,
Bless
I
you.
hear him tell, the ER people, I think he's hit his head. Something's happened.
Hmm.
And, they let him go back there immediately. I was not allowed to go back there due to being pregnant and the COVID precautions.
Right.
So, that kind of sent me into a tailspin, not being able to be with my child, not knowing what's going on.
Right.
Um, and it was probably about an hour, maybe a little more. My husband texted me and he said, well, I have good news. His head scans came back clear. And so as a parent, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what a miracle. That's wonderful. Because I
Right.
mean, I was expecting like a concussion, brain bleed, like something
Something
traumatic.
more severe. Right.
I had all these horrible things in my mind. And they finally did let me back there because my husband said they're wanting to transfer him to the children's hospital because they said his case is complex and they're not equipped for it. So,
Hmm.
and the doctor wants to talk to both of us. So I came back there, and, the doctor said, I want to get him to children's. She said, this is very odd. She said, I was expecting with how he looked for him to have some internal injuries. Um, she said, my best guess is some type of allergic reaction. She said, but I honestly don't know. And I want to get y'all children's.
Mhm.
Um, and obviously we agreed. We had been to our children's hospital, several times for outpatient things. It was always great. And as a
Right.
parent, you just put your child in the best spot. So we're like, absolutely, transfer him to children's.
Right.
Um, she did tell me though that due to how he looked, that CPS in the state of Alabama, it's the Department of Human Resources, that DHR had to be contacted, but that she emphasized to them that she did not think that this was abuse because his, scans were normal. Um, that she said she emphasized that to them.
Can I
Because
ask you why did they have to contact them if they why did they have to contact CPS if they knew that it wasn't that type of a,
my whole
case?
thing still to this day that I question, and I just think that's kind of where I find maybe some issues with how the mandatory reporting laws are written. Um,
Correct.
I think a lot of people, especially doctors, I mean, it's in there that they can lose their license if they don't report. And
Oh,
the way it
really?
was explained to me is like if the doctor didn't call, the nurse was going to call. And the doctor said she just really wanted to emphasize to them that she thought something else was going on with the child.
Oh, wow.
Um, and that it wasn't clear cut. But I do think it's a problem, with how the mandatory laws are written. Um,
Absolutely.
because I don't. I think she was being honest. I do.
Mhm.
There's some people that have asked me, do I think she was setting us up? She could. I
Mhm.
mean, could have been, but her demeanor to me was of true concern, and she did seem dumbfounded. And in the medical records that we got from the particular hospital, she did document very odd case.
Really?
So I do think she was being honest and forthcoming in that, but I also feel there's this danger of, well, if we don't know what it is, if we're unsure, we're just going to call DHR anyway. I think there's,
Mm.
just that narrative um,
Right.
of more better safe than sorry. And to an extent, I get that because there are abused children.
Right, that's true. They are
Um,
right.
there are
Mhm.
children. So it wasn't so much the fact that they had to be called in the beginning that really upset me.
Mhm.
It was what transpired after and how our whole entire case was handled that bothered me.
With
Um,
okay.
because, and
Please,
I'll,
go ahead. Go ahead.
because I'm a licensed clinical social worker for the state of Alabama.
Oh, wow.
I'm licensed to practice in Alabama. I don't, work with a state agency, but I do have
Mhm.
a master's in social work and I'm licensed to practice. I work for a federal agency, but
Okay.
I get mandated reporting, and
Right.
I stupidly tried to tell myself what I had learned in my education,
Mm.
that it's all about the family. It's all about trying to keep the family together. Um,
Right.
so like, that's what I remember being taught. So, I was trying to not get too upset about it.
Mhm.
Initially, obviously as a parent, it concerns you when you hear those words we've called DHR.
Of course,
But
yes. Wow.
I was trying to remain, somewhat open-minded about it.
Right.
And just me and my husband both naively thought in the beginning that if we were honest, that that would work in our favor. Um, but it became clear they didn't care about the truth. They had their narrative and they were going to make it fit. Um,
Right. That
I,
I'm so glad you said that, please. No, I'm so serious because what you said, a lot of, I mean, from your profession, in your field of professionalism, obviously in the field you work in, like you said, you just thought you could be honest, you could be truthful with the matter, a lot of people normally do, right? And they don't discriminate, they don't care, you know, what your background is, what your education consists of, what you do for a living. Don't none of that matter when it comes to their narrative dealing with certain situations with CPS that lacks integrity. So I'm glad you shared that, because that was going to, I wanted to ask you, and please continue on, because I think this is so much information that you're sharing that's going to really open up people's ears who didn't realize how CPS affects so many people in different forms of life. Can I ask you, was that one of the most shocking things that you experienced with knowing the type of work that you do and how they treated you, or?
It was, and parts of it I do think were personal. I think they didn't like me and my husband. I think they wanted to make an example of us.
I can see
Um,
that. Yes.
um I think they
Mhm.
wanted to make an example of me and my husband. Um and I was definitely frowned upon for standing by my husband.
Wow.
Because he was prime suspect number 1. That became very clear very quickly.
Wow.
Um And so, the manipulation tactics that they use when you're a married couple, to try to get you to turn, on your spouse.
Yes.
Um, so I feel I was kind of looked down on, for so called choosing a man over my child, but I knew my husband had not done anything.
Correct.
I would never stand, by my husband, and vice versa. Had we, neither one of us ever wavered in the fact that neither one of us, did anything to harm our son.
Correct.
Um, but it quickly spiraled out of control when we got to Children's of Alabama. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it quickly spiraled out of control. He was air flighted by helicopter, so me and my husband had to drive. And so we got there probably like about 2.5 hours
Mm-hmm.
um, after he did. Um, and I remember they called me on the phone and told me, your son has arrived here. He's in a great deal of pain. He's screaming, crying. Do we have your permission to give him morphine? And as a mother, you hear all you hear is your child is in pain. And I'm already so overwhelmed from everything
Of
that's transpired.
course.
I agree. I'm like, yes, give him morphine. And I remember I
Mm-hmm.
got off the phone and my husband was like, well, who was that? I said, that was the hospital, saying that he's arrived. They were saying he's in pain and they needed my permission to give morphine.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, which in my husband, he wasn't mad at me, but just he was like, well, that's very interesting that they said that because the doctor at the previous ER before he was transferred, I didn't witness that actual physical exam that was done because I was not allowed back initially. But my
Uh-huh.
husband said that doctor, she mashed like on all of his face to see if he would react for pain, and he didn't.
Really?
And so he was like, that's just very interesting. And so now looking back, we think he was just scared, terrified because he didn't know what was happening to him. He was an 18-month-old child all by himself.
Correct.
I mean, I'm sure he was swarmed the minute he got off, the little helicopter, and you have all these adults around you that you don't
Very
know,
scary. Yes.
picking you and pulling on you and doing all this stuff. Um,
Right.
so then we get back there, um, and there's a doctor in there, a nurse, um, a chaplain, um,
Mm-hmm.
which I know this is going to sound terrible. We have chaplains where I work. They're there to support, the patient and the family
Mm-hmm.
during, during difficult times.
Right.
They're a part of the team. I don't have a problem with that, but I had a very big problem with how this particular chaplain was used. Um, she kept
Can you
stating
explain why? Like, why would you? Is there a reason, or?
she just kept stating, we've been telling your son that the staff here loves him and that God loves him. And she just kept saying that over and over. And finally, I just had to pop in, yes, God loves him and his parents love him as well.
Correct. That
And
part.
I just, I didn't appreciate, just the way that it was used, um,
Right. Hmm.
just rubbed me the wrong way. Especially as a Christian, I just felt that was a very manipulative way.
Yeah,
Um,
like it was steered big time. Yeah,
you
they,
know,
yeah,
just to use it that way, and to
right,
say, those type of things, with me and my husband there. But the doctor that was examining my son, she introduced herself as a physical injury specialist. And alarm bells went off for me immediately, like with the type of question she was asking. Um, what happened? What do you think happened? My husband answered, just point blank, well, we believe he hit his head on his crib. It's a wooden crib. He's been having trouble with transitions and sleeping.
right.
And she said, well, no, that's not possible.
Hmm.
Um, and she just kept giving the roundabout like answers, not really answering anything. Um, and finally she did say, well, this child, it was physical force. He was struck. And I asked, I said, well, can you explain then how a child, I said, I acknowledge, yes, his face, on first glance, it is concerning. I said, that's why we brought him in. I said,
Absolutely.
but he has no other areas or marks anywhere on his body. I,
Hmm.
head scan at the previous ER was clear. I said, so how do you explain that?
Correct.
And
That's
she
what I want
said,
to know.
and her answer was he was lucky. That was her answer. Um,
Look,
she took so many photos of his face. That was the first time I had ever seen a doctor take photos like that. That, was again, alarm bell. I was like, this is not a normal exam. This is not a normal
mm,
doctor.
doesn't sound like
Um, and then after she left, I looked at my husband. I said, you do realize what they're accusing us of, right? And he said, well, she's wrong. My husband still, bless his heart, he was like,
it.
she
Still trying to have hope. Yeah.
like she's wrong, like she doesn't know what she's talking about, like it's gonna be fine. He said, he said, I know you're, emotional and hormonal. He said, but it's gonna be fine. He's like, he said, it's gonna work out. They can't, they're not gonna take, they can't, he said, they can't take our son
Mm.
because we didn't do anything. That was his, law. He
Well,
was
that
like,
was the truth. So that's the way it should have been.
he was like, we didn't do anything. Um,
Right.
then they came in the next morning and said that he had to get another round of head scans along with a full body x-ray, like his fingers, toes, everything. And I said, well, why? I said he already had a head scan at the previous that was
Right.
fine. And I'm not going to use the doctor's name. Well, they're like, doctor such and such wants her own scans. She does her own scans. And she and a full body exam is that's just part of the exam, so he has to have it done. But to me that just didn't make any sense. Like, it should be individualized to the child. Like, okay, if you want another,
Correct.
like if you want your own set of head scans, okay, fine. But like a whole body scan, there was no need for
Full
that.
body scan. To me, okay, once Candace, with that being said, I'm just curious to know because I've never known a doctor in a hospital to go to that extent. They normally will bring somebody in. So was this still the hospital recommending these CAT scans, or was this like a third party
It
person
was
at this
it
point?
it was this doctor at the hospital.
Hmm.
She was dictating, pretty much everything. Um,
Hmm.
and also she had put him in a neck brace. Um, there was no need for a neck brace. He had no neck injury. That had already been ruled out, with the scans
Right.
he had had. If he had needed a neck brace, he would have come in a neck
Yeah,
brace.
neck brace. Exactly. That part.
Um, and I
Wow.
remember they came in and told us, well, his body scan is fine, his head scan is fine. Well, yeah, we knew that was going to be the case. And they
Hmm.
were like, so the neurosurgeon, though, will have to come around and take off the neck brace. We can't, like, the nurse said that she couldn't take it off. So, okay, fine. Well, then this doctor, she comes back in for another round of pictures.
Oh my goodness.
Found it very interesting that the neck brace didn't come off until she got her second round of pictures. After she came in and did that, it was probably about an hour, and the neurosurgeon came in, and he was very rude to me and my husband. He was like, he doesn't need this neck brace. Why is he in this neck brace? We didn't put it on him. One of your doctors did.
Right. This was your surgeon that said that he
I mean,
was, wow.
we didn't put him in it.
Right.
Um, and by that time, I looked her up on the hospital website,
Hmm.
and specialty. It was the first time I had ever heard of this field. It was child abuse pediatrician.
Oh my God.
And so I showed it to my husband. I said, "Do you see?" I said, "This is serious." I was like, "Do you see this?" And then, first of all, my whole problem with the thing is how secretive it was.
Hmm.
Called herself a physical injury specialist. That's not even like a term at all.
Right.
Um, you should have identified yourself as a child abuse pediatrician.
That she
You
did not. Hmm.
you have stated to me and my husband that you were concerned for child abuse and that that's what the exam was for. And I also feel that me and my husband should have at least been given the option of consenting to those type of, imaging and photos. We were not
I
asked.
agree. I agree.
We
Oh
were
my
told
God.
this is what we're doing. And I mean, you essentially, in this type of setting, you lose all of your rights as a
You
parent.
do. Oh my God. Oh my God.
You have no say at all. Um and then it was probably 8, 9 o'clock that night. I got a call um from one of the DHR workers who said she had received the doctor's report, and she was like, you and your husband are going to have to leave the hospital immediately. Y'all can no longer have any contact with your son, and you're going to have to get me a family member within the next half hour that can take him, or your son will go into foster care.
Oh my, that
Um,
just like that. That was it.
that I mean, that quickly, um,
Wow.
I collapsed in the floor.
And you
Um,
were pregnant, right, during this
ye-
time?
yes, I was 5 months pregnant with our second son. Um, my husband had to finish the phone call. Um, I do remember him asking, because he had it on speakerphone, so I was still able, to hear everything. Um,
Wow.
he asked her, he said, "Are we able to fight this?" And she said no. I mean, but to me, that is wrong to say that, because you can.
You
Um,
absolutely, that's
you
violating your rights. Yes,
I
you can fight it. Yes.
you can fight it, but you do, when something like this happens. I mean, you don't have the rights to your child that you think you do. You can lose them in an instant.
Mm.
Um, you are living your life normally, and then it is turned upside down. Um, and your life, it becomes a fight. We were fighting not just to get our son home,
Mhm.
um, but we were fighting to ensure our second born child didn't go into the system when he was born, and we were fighting to ensure me and my husband's literal freedom. Um,
Oh, yeah.
but
Absolutely.
then it opens a whole criminal side, which is just as traumatizing and invasive. Um, we were very fortunate that my mother-in-law was able to take him. Um,
Mhm.
Traumatizing for her. I mean, just think about your city. I mean, she knew, that Knox had, some type of, incident, and that we were at the
Right.
hospital. But we had to call her in the middle of the night, and we're like, "Hey, you've got to come to such and such, because if you don't," I mean, so it's traumatizing, not just for
For
the child,
everyone.
parents, but if you have extended family, like I said, we were very fortunate that we did, that supported us. My mother-in-law and father-in-law supported us. My mom supported us. Our whole family did not waver, but it's traumatizing to everyone. Um,
Absolutely. Everyone that's involved with, because they love the child and care for the child as well. So
and,
absolutely.
my both of me and my husband's parents said, that they felt so helpless because they could do nothing to change the situation for me and my husband. They saw the pain we were in,
Mm,
nothing they could do about it.
right.
Um, and we were also fortunate enough that following Monday, because all of this transpired over a weekend. That following Monday, me and my husband were able to go out and retain an attorney. Not everybody can do that.
Not everybody can. And before you get to that, Candace, this is something that came to me. I think it's so important for other parents that's dealing with situations where they're in the hospital for something that CPS is now getting ready to enter into their lives, or they have already. What is it? Can you just? I know you say when they stepped out, when they brought in the other doctors, it's trying to now accuse or make accusations, saying what you said that actually really happened, saying that it didn't happen. So now you're noticing a different medical team members that's coming in, taking all these extreme, more pictures and being more invasive and things like that. What was your true eye opener that made you realize, hey, this is something else that we've stepped in bigger than what we imagined? Was it the new doctors that they were bringing in? Because that was my question that's why I was asking, is this a doctor that was assigned from the hospital? Because this particular doctor would seem like her biggest mission was to prove something, with all those different pictures and x-rays and things of that sort. So yeah, so people got to be mindful of, if you're in the hospital with your children, different doctors or staff members are coming in that normally wouldn't come in, right? So can I ask you, what was the light went off when you said, wait a minute, something else is happening here that could possibly involve CPS? What made you know that?
It was really from the moment we got there and she introduced herself as the physical injury specialist, just because I had never heard that term before.
Me
And
neither.
when she said, this was physical force,
Mm,
I knew exactly. She wouldn't flat out say, well, I think
right.
son, but in a roundabout way, I knew what she was
Mhm.
saying. And so
Who's up to-
I think
Yes.
for parents to just be mindful of when an exam doesn't feel right, when it's very invasive, whether that's pictures, lots of scans,
Right.
lots of blood tests, and
Right.
and probably acronyms that sound weird. Like her title
Mhm.
was officially child abuse pediatrician, but she used physical injury specialist. But anything like CAP,
That.
child abuse pediatrician, or I know in some hospitals it's a care team. So any type of weird
That's you, Candace.
that you've probably never heard before,
Right.
especially if they are very aloof, I would say, not very warm and engaging like a typical, physician is. Um,
Right.
so,
That's right of
that would be,
mhm.
that would be, my thing for parents, but also my number one advice, that in the end worked well, for me and my husband, as hard as it was, you have to keep your cool no matter what, because what they are looking for is a reaction. There is a time and a place for you to have your say, but
Correct.
me and my husband had lost it in the hospital, cussing everybody out or making a scene or refusing. I've had some parents tell me, well, I wouldn't have left the hospital. Yes, you would have. You would have either left it willingly or they would have removed you by force. So
Wow.
they were never able to say that me and my husband were aggressive, were
Right.
non-compliant. I mean, they couldn't say that. They couldn't.
They
Um,
couldn't say that. Right. That's okay. Okay.
you you have to keep
Mhm.
your composure.
Composure. Yes, absolutely. Because they will use that against you.
And also my number one advice would be, especially if you are a married couple,
Mhm.
find an attorney that will agree to represent you both. Um,
Mm.
we interviewed a few attorneys before we found the one that ultimately represented us.
Okay.
Um, but several of them, their advice was for me to kick my husband out of the house if I ever wanted
Really?
to see my son again, because they were like, they're going to come after husband. They're going to, say that he did it, and you're going to have to get rid of husband. And just, that was not going to happen.
Oh,
So,
okay.
our attorney that represented us, she believed in both me and my husband. And now she was honest, like everything that she said was going to happen happened. I mean, she knew
Wow.
stuff, she knew the tactics, that they used. So she prepared us. She didn't sugarcoat. She was like, this is going to be a long, hard fight. This is
Mm-hmm.
be emotionally draining. Um,
Absolutely.
and she did tell me and my husband, she said at the end, you and your husband will either be stronger or it will tear you apart.
My God.
And she said, so you're going to have to decide right now, you know, what are you going to do? And so, I mean, me and my husband had very rocky moments, but we ultimately stood by, each other.
That's
And I,
so important, Candace. Oh my God. And that's the importance of having an attorney. I just highly recommend. I'm so serious. I've been through it, went through it myself. And again, when I brought attorney on that new CPS laws, and like you said, your attorney, she already told you what was going to happen before it even happened. So, you know what I'm saying? Just that experience, that knowledge of having that wise legal counsel by your side, oh, it makes the difference. I just say that. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
oh, but, and, ultimately, ours started in June of 2020. Our
Hmm.
son, our case was dismissed in October of 2021.
Praise God.
Um, Ultimately, our son was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder with
Mhm.
self injurious behaviors.
Wow.
Um, our attorney, some more great advice. She was like, I know it's going to be hard on mother in law, but she was like, that crib that he was in, it has got to go to her house. And my brother-in-law actually set up this really good camera system for her where she was able to like watch him.
Hmm.
And she got, I don't know, we lost count of videos of him standing up in the exact same spot. Because just backtrack a little, when me and my husband got home after, our son was removed, we both said we just need to go upstairs and look at the crib, because we had
Hmm.
not done that. We had just rushed to the hospital. And,
Right.
I mean, who thinks to go upstairs and
Right. No,
go,
I wouldn't either. Yeah.
look at stuff before you go somewhere. But we were
Right.
like, go up and look. And
Hmm.
on the inside of the railing where he would always stand up, there was this perfect, like, just smear of blood. And there were
Hmm.
itty bitty, like on the railing, like you could see his little fingerprints, like
Wow.
where he had like mashed his hands, and like, because he would put his hands on like that on the railing, and he would lay his head down and just do this and then rotate from side to side. Uh,
Wow.
and my mother-in-law, she got so many videos like that.
That was so smart.
And, ultimately we had our own experts, which again cost
Hmm.
money that we were fortunate enough to have. Um,
Hmm.
Me and
Thank
my had the means to fight the system, and it was still a fight, still a
Mhm.
fight.
That
Um,
says a lot.
Even with the mounting evidence, DHR was like, well, the child abuse pediatrician says, that's just another thing that parents need to be aware of if their case involves a child abuse pediatrician. It takes on kind of its own life form. And once, CPS, DHR, whatever it is in your state has that, they just kind of latch on to that, and it doesn't
Mhm.
matter what other expert comes forward, what their I mean, we had pediatricians whose field was actually behavioral pediatrics. They
Mm.
had like actual expertise in this field. Um, we were fortunate enough that we had a judge who was, not biased, listened to
Mhm.
everything. And the kids, when my son was born, he became entangled in this mess. He was held at the hospital for 2 days while we waited to have a hearing saying that me and my husband, could take him home. What was so bad about that was, though, is that DHR, they tried to get a order to take him into custody, and it was
What?
denied.
For what?
Um,
For what cause?
there was no cause. They still, though, like, they came to the hospital, got with the hospital, said this family can't take this baby home. We have safety concerns. They used one of their loopholes that we have here in Alabama. I don't know if other states probably do have something similar. We have something called like summary removals, where a child in certain circumstances, immediate danger, can be removed without a court order. And like our attorney like used a situation, like if they have evidence that like a child, say for instance, is like in a drug house with meth and it's about to explode. Like obviously that's those type of situations, not a situation where a baby's been born in a hospital, you've
Wow.
gone to a court and tried to get a court order, it was denied, and now you're backtracking trying to use one of your loopholes to
Right.
the system essentially, which is
Correct.
done quite a lot because I have found that, you know, DHR, CPS, whatever they're called in whatever state, they essentially operate all the same. Um,
Yes.
Stating parents' civil rights left and right, and they do
Absolutely.
they do think they're the law. They are not,
They're
but
not.
they are. But I do stand more confident though in knowing my rights now. If that's just another thing that's come out of this, me and my husband both know our rights, not just when it comes to child welfare, but law enforcement as well. I have a completely
Included. Exactly.
different view of that, on the tactics they use when interviewing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and we had an attorney present. That's what was so bad. Like, our attorney was like, and think about it. She was like, I was here with y'all, and you saw the
Right.
tactics they use. So think about if you had been by
Imagine not
yourself.
having it. Right. Great
She,
point.
like, think if you had been up here, by yourself,
That's good.
how much worse it would have been. But it just, my heart really goes out to families who are still fighting to bring their children home. And,
Absolutely.
I believe, we were given a purpose for this. Me and my husband both believe strongly in advocating
Mm-hmm.
um, and doing all we can to bring awareness and change
Good.
um, on a
See that.
federal level, state level. Just the whole system needs a complete overhaul, um,
Yes.
in my opinion. And really, I feel every state needs to operate the same. I feel there needs to be more,
That's good.
uniformity. If you
Correct.
um, and
Because to me, it brings on more confusion. Each state has different, you know what I'm saying, laws and it's
mhm,
it to me, yeah, it keeps chaos going. I'm sorry, go ahead.
mhm. And you know, another thing, parents need to be aware of with, the child abuse, pediatrician, the exams are very invasive.
Mm,
Um, and that can be very traumatizing to the child.
right.
Um, my son, he had to go back for, and this was when he was with my mother-in-law. He had to go back to this particular doctor's. She has her own like clinic there at the hospital that does nothing but child abuse forensic like exams and all of this. So he had to get another round of scans. So more scans, more, radiation,
Hmm.
small child. But the most, and I don't say this, to upset any other parent who might be going through this, but they really need, to be prepared for the type of exam their child is more than likely going to be put through. Um, our son, also had to go through a sexual abuse exam.
Is it
Um,
mandatory though, Candace, that they have you have to take your child back to them, or can you get your own testing done,
um,
or
I don't think it's written, so to speak, that it's mandatory, but my mother-in-law was of the impression that she didn't have a choice because she was afraid if I don't do this, they're going to come take him
if
and
you
take
don't
him anyway.
comply? Yes,
And then,
yes.
and then nobody is going to know what's going on, with him.
Mhm.
Um, so it does take on a life of its own when these doctors become involved. And their exams are very invasive and traumatizing, to the child.
Absolutely, you know that they are. I've even wondered, is these particular doctors, are they contracted with CPS? Do you know, or is it?
I believe in some states they are. If you just Google child abuse pediatrician and
Mhm.
wrongful accusations, wrongful prison convictions, it is just a slew and wealth of information.
Wow,
Um, so I do believe in some states they're like directly contracted
that's
with
conception.
CPS. I could
Mhm,
never really find anything that this particular, doctor or clinic has a contract, so to speak, um,
mhm.
like in writing with DHR, but they work hand in hand. So
Right.
even
Basically, that's what I'm saying.
even
Yes.
if the contract isn't there, I mean, they're all essentially working. It's not
Together.
a medical exam. It is a prosecution. That's what it
Right.
is.
That's what
It's
it is.
not medical care. It's not a medical exam. I mean, she offered no medical treatment to my child. He was essentially because there was nothing that needed to be treated. Um,
Correct.
but I mean, all he did was take pictures and do these invasive exams. There
Invasive exams are helping to build your case up with CPS.
there I
Yes.
mean, there was no medical care. The care that my child got that was appropriate was all due to me and my husband. We were the
See,
ones who got him the services he needed. We were the
that's
ones who got the evaluations, that he needed. And we
mhm.
were very fortunate that we didn't encounter a lot of restrictions with that because
Good.
um now we didn't have contact with our son for 5 months, which was, I mean, we got through it. I mean, you really have no choice but to get through it,
Right.
but it you feel like a part of you is just dead.
You
Um,
do.
you're
Absolutely.
really grieving a child that is still alive.
That is still alive. Oh my God. And
Um,
Candace, please go on with that because honestly, that's great that you led us back to that because that was my next question. What did you do to help you get through your son being separated for 5 months from you and your
uh,
husband, your family?
really looking back, I feel, I was pregnant for a reason. That's what kept me going, honestly.
Mhm.
Um, because I knew I had, a human life growing inside of me that was dependent
Right.
on me.
Right.
So even though I had no desire to really eat, I had no desire to do anything, I did
Mm.
it because I knew I had an innocent, life inside of me
Right. That's
that,
good.
you know, that had to take, that I had to take
They
care of.
need you.
It have,
Yeah.
my family support, um,
Right.
from family and, me and my husband, all we had was each other. So,
Right.
like
Wow.
Ernie said, you can either lean on each other or you can let it, tear you down.
They tear you
Um,
down. My God.
so, we ultimately did get visitation, and the judge gave it unlimited, which is very rare.
Yes,
Um,
it is. I've never
it-
heard of that.
we got unlimited visitation. Of course, DHR was like, it has to be supervised. So, my mother-in-law or my mom, had to be there. But essentially when that started, we went to work. We set up the evaluations that we needed to. We set up, our experts examining him, all the things that we knew we needed to do. And then the services that they
Right.
recommend, we made sure he got them. And, that was something that our attorney pointed out, when we went for our dismissal hearing. She was like, these parents are the ones who did, everything and offered everything for the child. She said DHR has offered no service for the child at
An
all.
attorney, the power of an attorney, the knowledge. My
So
God.
the only thing that DHR did, and it was of no help, they made me and my husband take parenting classes, and we had to do counseling. And, at first we kind of pushed back on that. And our attorney, she was like, well, you don't have to do it because the judge, hasn't mandated that you do it. But she said,
Right.
I recommend, she said, sometimes you do kind of have to play the game.
You do. You do.
She said, my recommendation is to do it because then they can't say, well, see, they don't want
Right. Give
to,
them something to say. Yes.
they,
My attorney said the same thing.
um,
Yes.
they don't want
Mhm.
to cooperate. They don't want to do this. She said, just do it, just get
Right.
through it. And,
Right.
but, all of their services are like for one size fits all. I mean, I'm not knocking parenting classes for those who truly need it. I can see how there are people out there who need that information.
Right.
But for me and my husband, I mean, like
It's not for everybody.
I mean,
Hmm.
first class was how to make a bottle and change a diaper. I have an 18-month-old child. I'm pregnant with my second. I think I know how to change a diaper,
Right.
make a bottle, install a car seat. Like, we know how to do these things.
Right. It's just busy
Um,
work to me. They give you just busy work to
mhm.
keep you in the system. Yeah. It
And
doesn't. Right.
um,
Yeah.
and the counseling, I feel like they wanted us to fail that, but just another, looking back now, blessing from God. We had a
Hmm.
counselor who was
Hmm.
unbiased. She didn't form an
Praise
opinion,
God.
and she closed us out like after 6 sessions. She was like, "No offense," she said, "I can keep seeing y'all if y'all want somebody to talk to support y'all," but she said, "There's nothing
It's
that we're
not needed.
working on." She
Right.
said, "I'm closing y'all out," and they got very, very mad,
Of
very mad.
course they did. That's going
They,
against their narrative. Of course they did.
but
Candace, oh my God, you're dropping so many gems and nuggets. I'm so serious. I'm like, are we gonna have to have a part two? Because we're getting close to time. I'm so serious. I just, God, I know this is going to help heal and bring awareness to so many different people. Even when you were speaking with your husband, I've heard other stories that they try to separate wives from husbands. And like you said, your husband didn't do this to your child. So that'd be my biggest thing too, because I noticed that they target a lot of single parents.
hmm
And normally two is better than one, right? So I'm
hmm
thinking, is that the reason why they just want one person so they can just try to overtake that one person? But if you got somebody that's helping you in the fight, you have two minds, two sets of eyes, and arms and legs that can fight CPS together. And I think they see that as a threat. That's why a lot of reasons why they try to break up families and husbands and wives, because two, obviously a mother and father, is better for their children, right? So why would you want this parent to be in a single home? So that brings a lot of more questions to me. But I want to ask you again, with everything that you shared has been so tremendously helpful. Um, is there any particular reason other than all the knowledge you brought, the truth, the transparency forth that you've already shared? But is there anything that you like to continue to add, or what made you want to come on the platform? I know you said you and your husband they are advocates, right? Since you've been through it, you know personally what CPS is like and the horror it can bring into your life. Is there any other reasons why you want to share your story?
really just to give other parents out there hope. Um, it is possible to overcome it. There's
Yes.
another side of it, um, where your family can be whole. We have a happy and healthy, thriving 5-year-old and 3-year-old. It's
Amazing. That's so good.
And I know it's very easy for me to say that because my case is over and I have my family.
Right.
So I don't negate those who don't have that right now. It can feel so hopeless. And I'm going to even say it's okay to feel that. Allow yourself to feel all of the feelings, but don't stay there.
I agree. That's
Um,
great about
got
Candace.
got to
Mhm.
pull yourself up because
Hmm.
babies are counting on you,
Yes.
mm, to get them home where they belong.
Home where they belong. And with that, do you honestly think that your case would have got to where, which is obviously the ultimate goal, like you said, is bring your children, your child back home where they belong? Do you think that could have been accomplished without the help of your attorney?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Wow. Wow.
Absolutely not. She was definitely, God led us to her office that day. So we would not have gotten where we are without our attorney, because she got us the experts we needed, the
Wow.
just the general guidance and fighting, for our family, um,
Right.
and our rights. So no, I do not.
Wow, that's so good. Even the divine strategies that she used, having your mom to take the crib to, to a different location to monitor how your baby was interacting in the crib. To me, that was so smart. I mean, that was key witness evidence to prove what you saying was correct.
Hmm.
Just knowing the strategies to use, knowing the CPS laws, knowing what your rights are and when they're being violated. So yes, I'm like you. An attorney is definitely what helped to change the trajectory around with my CPS story years ago, because they had access to information that I didn't even know that they were able to utilize that helped to penalize CPS for their wrongdoing.
Hmm. And just, before we go, I know a lot of people have no choice but to use, a court appointed attorney.
Hmm.
Um, and, no, having an attorney to represent you is very, very important. But just some things,
Correct.
that I've learned, from other parents who, have walked this walk, and, we had some court appointed attorneys that actually got involved just out of sheer, because they automatically appoint you one. And so, like,
Right.
they kind of just stayed on, and our attorney kind of worked with them. But
Hmm.
I kind of got to see, if we had been stuck like with just them,
Oh my
I don't
gosh.
know if our son would have been home now and where we would have been, because a lot of times, because they are court appointed, they're
Hmm.
not getting paid a whole lot. They have a ton of cases.
Or
They're
any at all. Yeah.
they're going to recommend that you agree to whatever DHR says, CPS says. They're going to recommend that you settle, that you do this, do that. A lot of the time, sign your child away,
Yes, they do.
or, do some type of deal, admitting guilt, to get your child back. Whatever way is quickest to close the case, which thank
That's
God
what it's.
we had our attorney,
That's
who said,
good, Candace.
no, 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 we're not doing that.
Right.
But so fine, you can always request, a new court appointed attorney. They work for you. Find one, because there
That,
are really good ones out there. There are.
they are. That's so
So
true.
keep going until you find one,
The right one.
that is going to fight for you and, your children. Um,
Correct.
so, definitely, just to keep that in mind, because lots of them do unfortunately work hand in hand with, the system, and not for the parent.
Yes, Candace. I am so glad you said that. Because a lot of people do not know that. And that's so true, because I remember one of the court appointed attorneys that I had, she told me, well, the worst case scenario, if your child is adopted out, at least you can visit them from time to time. And I'm like, that is not the reason why I'm fighting for my child in court, to just for them to be adopted out and for me to visit my child with somebody else. So I immediately fired that attorney, a
Mm.
court appointed attorney. And again, you get what you pay for. And I will say, listen, I've said it before, some things are worth fighting for, and obviously it's your children, that they are worth sacrifice.
Mhm.
So Candace, we have come to the end of our show today. You have provided so much wisdom and knowledge and gems and tokens that I hope people learn from and be able to use it with their own stories that's dealing with CPS, or if they know someone that is. Please like and share this story with someone. I know it's going to bless them and give them hope. Is there anything else, Candace, that you would like to say before we end the segment today?
Nothing but just thank you for having me. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and if we need to do a part two, I am here for it.
Yes, because while you were talking, I'm like, oh my goodness, we're running out of time. But it's some other questions that I know that people want answers to. So yes, I'm gonna have to bring you back for a part two if you don't mind. I would love to do that.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Candace. Again, you have dropped some gems and nuggets on this Monday. Today's not Monday. Yes, it is. Gosh, the time goes by so fast. This Monday motivation. So thank you so much, Candace. We will be bringing you back, and you have a great day. And I'm so glad that you brought your baby back home where they belong with you and your family. God bless you
Yes, thank
and your
you.
family. Well, that wraps up our segment. Again, I'm telling you, I really hope that you got a chance to tune in. If you didn't, watch it later, share it with somebody. I know this story is definitely going to open up some people's eyes to let you know how CPS can be no matter who you are. It affects everyone at some type of shape, form, or fashion. And today's story with Candace, I think, was a great example of that. So please don't never give up fighting for your children. They deserve to be back home where they belong. Always keep God first and just know that where there is a will, there's a way. There is nothing too hard that God cannot do. So keep fighting for your babies until they're back home with you. I am your host, Latrika Jones. Thank you for tuning in today, and you have a great remainder of your day. Until next time.